People come to Inclusion Solutions for a range of different reasons. Sometimes it's that they've identified that their clubs or community groups require some support or training. At other times it's because they've got high rates of antisocial behaviour or youth crime. It's also around engagement of low participation groups, which might include people with disability, it might include older adults in communities and a range of other people. So that's typically why people would come to Inclusion Solutions.
A lot of the work we do is really around not only how to engage different marginalised groups, but also how best to understand them. So like anything, there's always a huge aspect of fear around things that we don't know and people that we don't know a lot about. And it's really about breaking down those barriers and allowing people to understand that that's exactly what they just are people.
Denver and the team are fantastic, really dedicated and passionate group of people that are committed to ensuring that there's opportunities for people regardless of where they come from, what their background is, where they might live. Yeah, I think one of the best things that's come out of our partnership with Inclusion Solutions is the way not only our staff but our volunteers and clubs approach the concept of inclusion. It can seem quite foreign to people when they first delve into it, but really at its heart it's about ensuring that people are connected to each other and that people feel part of something bigger, part of a community.
I think for me the biggest drive is around finding connections for people and hearing the little changes that it makes in people's lives, and how for us it might be something insignificant but it's life-changing for a person.
To gain some knowledge and some expertise in what to do, an organisation like Inclusion Solutions is perfect. They're going to provide you with the training that you require to overcome any barriers that you may see and help you with recruitment and how to entice people to your club.
I'm interested in volunteering, and I have in the past, but I'm not sure what I really want to do. So this gives me an opportunity to find out what organisations are out there, what jobs are out there, and to link my skills and interests into what they need.
Long-term solutions is what we pride ourselves on, and it's actually one of our checks and balances is that we want to leave every community better off after our involvement as opposed to just for the time that we're there. So it's all about building capacity and really emphasising sustainability. Good morning, one and all. My name's Denver De Cruz, your MC for today's event. I stand here on behalf of our entire team at Inclusion Solutions with immense pride to say the following. Wanju, welcome, or in my mother tongue, Vanakam. Welcome to the first Social Inclusion Forum of 2020. Nala Kadich, Wajak Mot, Kayan Kadak, Nijabuja. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the local Wajak Noongar people. In particular, I'd like to pay acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging. What a privilege it is to be sharing community with each and every one of you today, in person. Who would have thought, in 2020? I think that deserves a round of applause to all of you and every Western Australian. A few housekeeping things to get underway. We are in COVID times, so we have guidelines on every table. It's been sent out by email, and we ask you to please consider those and follow those as well. Mobile phones, I might just ask you to take 10 seconds now just to make sure your phones are either switched off or on silent. That would be greatly appreciated, in particular for the videographers. Bathrooms are just adjacent to this wall on the other side, so out the door and just down the corridor. In the unlikely case of an emergency, the assembly area is directly across from the front door, just on the grass area in the car park. Today we will have Emma, our wonderful photographer, cruising around at the back. So Emma, hands up. So you might see Emma cruising around, and Emma will ask you for a photo if you're happy to oblige. And we do have G and Bernie at the back of the room as well, videoing the forum today. You might have been handed a postcard as well as you came in the door. One thing we'd love for all of you guys to do is just fill one out, and the handy Tom at the back is holding one up. So if you haven't got one yet, please make sure you grab one, and there's an entry box just behind roughly where Kira is. Kira, if you want to put your hand up, just in the corridor behind Kira there. While you're all special guests, I'd like to acknowledge a few in particular. Crispin Roberts, Policy Advisor and representing Minister Stephen Dawson. Crispin, great to have you in the room. Janine Freeman, MLA, Member for Mirrabooka, and also representing the Honourable David Templeman, MLA and Minister for Local Government, Heritage and Culture and the Arts. Janine, thank you for coming along today. Lorna Baker and the team at DPC, Department of Premier and Cabinet, and Mark Fitzpatrick as well, the CEO of Telethon Speech and Hearing. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our sponsors for the forums. Rotary WA, I know we've got Joy right at the back representing Rotary, so to you and your team, thank you very much for that. And Paul Holly, wherever you are, Paul, and the team at Evolve Wealth Management as well. Thank you very much, because these forums couldn't come to you guys without your support, so I really appreciate that. As you may know from past forums, we tend to have a theme for each forum, and today the theme is a very fitting one: inclusion in a changing world. I came across a little quote a few weeks ago, and I thought that might be perfect for this forum. And the quote simply reads, "Life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain." And I think that really captures where we're at in WA and right across the country. So we did have May Maguire, a local elder who was going to do the welcome to country today, but given COVID times, May did wake up a little bit under the weather and is pulled out to keep everyone else safe. So acknowledging that May would have been here otherwise, but irrespective, we're going to push on through. We've got 5 brilliant speakers for you today. So to start us off and to unpack the theme of inclusion in a changing world will be Adam Nankin. Adam will be followed by Angie McCluskey, founder of the Forget Me Not Cafe movement. Jeff Dennis, the CEO of Swan Districts Football Club, will talk about what inclusion looks like in the sporting world and the changing face of inclusion as well. Jeff will be followed by Ian Tsolakis, and Ian is a long-time employee of Crown and manages the CROWNability project at Crown as well. Bringing up the rear, and by no means the least important, is Elizabeth Shaw. So Beth is the Associate Director of KPMG and was recently acknowledged as the top 100 most influential women, according to Australian Financial Review. So what a lineup. I'm very excited about what this lineup is going to bring us for the next couple of hours. Now, to start us off, and I've got to admit, usually I'm given a bio for every speaker. On this occasion, and perhaps because Adam is part of our team, I was given no such thing. So really, I have the liberty to introduce Adam to you in any way I wish. So Adam is an inclusion consultant at Inclusion Solutions. But here are a few other things that I would like to add to give you a sound idea of who Adam is. Adam's father of 2, husband to 1. Hope I've got that the right way around. Emma, wherever you are, if you're watching, I promise it is the right way around. Adam's also the doggy dad to 1 beautiful yet mildly confused looking Labrador cross cavoodle. Just think about that, a Labrador cross cavoodle. Ringo Starr. Other things I can tell you about Adam. Adam's a lover of soccer in particular, lover in general too, but lover of soccer. Adam loves loud socks. I'm pretty sure he's obliged today as well. He's currently obsessed with fixing up old school reel lawnmowers. So the old cylinder type of lawnmowers. Loves a good chat. Now these chats usually start with the phrase, "Mate, have you got 2 seconds?" For anyone that knows Adam Nankin, that's generally code for "have you got 6 hours?" Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adam Nankin.
I too would like to just take a couple moments and also do an acknowledgement of country. I'm lucky enough to have come to Australia from South Africa, and every single day I acknowledge the beauty of country, driving over the Swan River, being able to go for a surf at Trigg, seeing the beautiful hills of Kalamunda. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and in particular to elders that will be emerging. I think acknowledging culture is so important, and being part of an Australia moving forward, I wish to acknowledge the culture continually over my lifetime. So today, a few weeks ago, I was asked to set the scene of what today is really about. And as Denver mentioned, it's inclusion in a changing world. And one of the things I want to touch on is the dynamics of what that changing world looks like. So I was really excited, and I thought, great. After Amy asked me to present, I started furiously writing a whole bunch of topics down on paper. Slept on it, woke up the next morning, read it, and thought, geez, Adam, this is rubbish, and chucked that in the bin. Then calmed down a little and started writing a bit of a second draft. And I read it to my wife that evening, and I said, hey, Em, what do you think? And she goes, it's good, but instead of trying to articulate a whole bunch of really, complex information, why don't you just talk about your experience over the past 2 years and reflect on things over the past few months in particular? And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I had a interactive activity planned where everyone would have a A4 piece of paper, they'd write what inclusion means to them, they'd make it into a paper aeroplane and then chuck it across the room, and everyone would pick up a different aeroplane and read what inclusion is. And I was going to highlight what diversity is. Everyone's thoughts would be different, but really what inclusion means, that ethos of what it means to everyone. But because of COVID, we would have had to sanitize every single plane as soon as it left your hand. So COVID ensured the paper aeroplane stayed grounded. So what I'm going to do is reflect a little bit. And those of you that may know Inclusion Solutions, our scope of work is very broad. It can be, developing an integrated soccer league for kids with and without disabilities to be club-owned with stakeholders like Manchester United. It could be finding employment opportunities, open employment opportunities for people with disabilities. It could be working with older adults, people that are at risk of social isolation in retirement, and connecting people to their local community, their local clubs and groups, where they can find that sense of belonging and really gift their time and talents to clubs and groups that need support now more than ever. And what that made me realize is, yes, no two projects are the same, but no two days, no two mechanisms, no two outcomes, and no two gauges of success are the same either. And that really made me think about the work that we are involved in and how there is no roadmap, there is no blueprint for the work that we do, and neither should there be. There's best practice, there's great theories, but there's no blueprint for the way and working within the inclusion space. And there's huge opportunity in that. We now have this opportunity to take the "this is how it's been done before" rule book and chuck it out of the window. We have this opportunity to change the rhetoric of participation is inclusion, segregation is inclusion, project delivery is inclusion, and really say, are we aiming too low? Now, one of the things, and I do not want to sound like a LinkedIn post, so I'm very conscious about that, but this, a quote from somebody a lot smarter than me said, aim for the moon and you'll fall amongst the stars. Aim for the stars and you'll fall amongst the clouds. Aim for the clouds and you'll fall into the sky. Aim for the sky and you'll hit the ceiling. I want you to think about that just for a moment. We are living in a changing world, an evolving world, a world that is uncertain in a lot of ways. And we're in this place where we're able to focus on some really important issues that have been on the back burner for far too long. We have this opportunity now to recalibrate, to reprioritize, and to really think, okay, as a Western culture, we've been doing a whole bunch of things really well, but what we've also maybe done is really neglect some of the fundamental attributes that are the true gauges of success. How we treat people, and how we can use our circumstances to improve the lives of others. Now, one of the things that I continually thought about when we were talking about inclusion in a changing world, the more I fundamentally believe that inclusion can change the world, can change the way that we operate. And I'm conscious I'm standing up here as a white male that has had very little barriers to inclusion in my life. And I also understand that I've been afforded privileges that many are not afforded throughout the world. But I also know that I'm able to use those privileges because the intent the ethos, and most importantly, the actions that we show today are going to influence the next generation. And that's going to trickle down to the generation after them. Which really made me think about something that on my first day at Inclusion Solutions 2 and a bit years ago now, I had my induction, and the wonderful Denver de la Cruz called me into his office, and what we did is he said, "Adam, have you thought about legacy?" And I understood what the word meant, and I'd never really put it into context of the work that we do out in community. And one of the things that he said that was really profound is he said, we do the work that we do to know that we have made a difference for good when we are gone. I was like, geez, man, that's a bit heavy on your first day. But nonetheless, it really did strike a chord. I went home, I looked at my two beautiful girls. I had a newborn at that point, and I thought, geez, I want Audrey and Malia, my two little ones, to really be proud of their dad. And that's not because of the things that we own or the things that I have, but I want them to be proud of their dad because of the things that I've done. I'm going to ask everyone to indulge me for a moment, and in a moment I'm going to ask everyone to close their eyes. If you don't feel comfortable, by all means, please, you do not have to do this by any means. It will make the next minutes a little more interesting. But what I'm going to ask is if everyone could close their eyes now, keep them closed for a little while. I'd like everyone just to take a deep breath. Relax your shoulders. Feel comfortable within your seat. And I'm going to ask everyone just to visualize for a moment. I would like you to think about the first meaningful time you were included. I know it's broad. Could be back when you were a child. Could be more recently. The first meaningful time you were included. Now, what I'd like you to think about is the personal people that helped you in that situation. The person or the people that helped you in that situation. I'd like you to think of their name. Think of their face. Think of their smile. And I want you to think about the feelings you had in that situation. How that situation made you feel. Any lessons that you learned. And if that had a part of shaping who you are today. Now I'd like everyone to open their eyes. Every single person's memory and situation that they had in their mind in this room will be completely unique, which shows the power of diversity. But that feeling that I hope everyone felt in the room would have had huge similarities, that feeling of inclusion. Now that person's face who you had in your mind, or those people's faces you had in your mind, the names that you had on the tip of your tongue, those were agents of change. And I want everyone in this room to ask themselves one question. Do you want to be remembered as an agent of change now and for the next generation? Up on the screen, you have a great person reading another great person's book. And something Mahatma Gandhi said, again, not to sound like a LinkedIn post, is be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see with one person, with two people, where you work, friends, family, your community. Because every single person in this room has the potential and the power to be an agent of change. Be the superhero. Be the person that stands up for what you know is right. Let's change the world with inclusion. Through the thoughts we have, the things we say, and most importantly, through the things that we do. And at the very least, let's aim for the stars. Today, you are going to hear from some incredible agents of change that have used their situations to improve the lives of others and really understand what the benefit and support community can offer. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to me today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your morning.
What an incredibly powerful way to start us off today. As a fellow immigrant, Adam, I'm extremely thankful for that notion of legacy. Earlier this week, Adam and I were at a presentation where we spoke about legacy and that agent of change for each of us. And for me, it was a teacher called Rebecca Hassler, who really changed my course. I was in detention on a Monday afternoon, which probably wasn't unusual at year 8 level for me. Probably had the ability to go one or two ways. And Rebecca, for me, was the person that really instilled a sense of belief in me. And for the first time in my schooling life, I felt that someone really truly believed in something that I could do. I won't tell you the full story, but for me, I think about Rebecca now, many moons later, 6 or 7 years later, and think how thankful I am for that. Adam, I think that notion of no blueprint is incredibly important and one that we need to understand. We have an opportunity through COVID, an incredibly important opportunity right now to reset. That notion of reset is actually really pivotal to where we are now. We are the custodians of community. And the thing I love most out of all of that was probably that notion, with privilege comes responsibility. We're not immune to that. A quote that relates really closely to that from the great Margaret Mead: "Never doubt a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens who can change the world." Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Resonates very clearly with me. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our second guest speaker. Teenage sweethearts, married at the tender age of 18. Michael and Angie were an invincible team, raising 3 talented, successful, and amazing children who've now gone on to get married and have their families of their own. The idea to set up the Forget-Me-Not cafes were born when Angie was looking for somewhere to take Michael, who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in November 2015. Unable to leave Michael alone on their property, Angie gave up her position as a librarian to become his full-time carer. Angie discovered a lack of community groups that would allow loved ones and their carers to enjoy a quiet cuppa with other people in a similar position. Angie formed strong friendships with 3 other women whose husbands were also living with dementia and helped them to start their own Forget-Me-Not cafes, which now is a network of 17 cafes across Western Australia. Angie was awarded the Metropolitan WA Senior of the Year in 2019 for establishing the popular Forget-Me-Not Cafe initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Angie McCluskey.
Good morning, I'm Angie McCluskey and virtually just heard everything I was going to say. Michael and I, yes, we were teenage sweethearts. We've got 3 wonderful children and 5 gorgeous grandchildren. And Michael's living with dementia. Dementia is the umbrella for a variety of cognitive impairments, of which Alzheimer's is the most prevalent. There's around 460,000 people in Australia living with dementia. Out of that, 28,000 have younger onset dementia. So that's people not geriatricians, you know, they're not in their 80s, they're people in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And 71% of those are still living at home. So it's something that we really need to think about, and we need to be doing something for those people. Michael's diagnosis wasn't easy. It came round about his 65th birthday, and he had a minor traffic incident, of which we then realised something was desperately wrong. He'd leave early for work, around about 3 a.m, just to avoid other cars. He'd ring me during the day, not knowing what suburb he was in. And he was a traffic controller, so he should have. We'd have contradictory conversations. Michael asked me to collect him from our local club, and then get rather annoyed and upset when I did. And then I think it came to a head again when he had problems actually processing information. As I say, we lived on a property in 2J, and a chainsaw was something he often had in his hand, but he couldn't understand what 50 to 1 meant when he had to put petrol and oil in the chainsaw. He was also quite a good cook until the day that he made me spinach and ricotta cannelloni, omitting to add the cannelloni, which made it a somewhat interesting meal. Obviously, our family and friends realised what was happening, that we were having problems, and I took Michael to the local doctor. The diagnosis isn't easy. Initially, our doctor told Michael he was much too young to have Alzheimer's and that he dressed too nicely, and sent him home with a prescription for gout. So eventually we realised that this wasn't going to work. So we went to my son's doctor in Perth. Diagnosis was almost instant. He gave Michael a mini mental state examination and sent him for a brain scan, which confirmed his condition. For almost a year, Michael stayed at home. He couldn't work, and I was still working in the library. He was usually a gregarious, outgoing person, but that had all changed. He started withdrawing from social events, and his behaviour was so unpredictable. Eventually, with the family, I decided to take long service leave, and we'd look to move to Perth, near our family and friends. Within a couple of months, we sold our house and moved in with our son James in his home in Rowley-Stone. His property had a small studio, which we converted, and now live in his garden. During that time, we were given referrals, and we were referred to a specialist in Fremantle, which was excellent. And we also contacted Alzheimer's WA for support, which they did provide. At the same time, we registered for clinical trials, realising that Alzheimer's and dementia are currently incurable diseases with nothing to stem them. And clinical trials are the only way we're going to actually combat this disease. So we registered and we got involved. As I said, friendships change. Many family and friends didn't know how to relate to us anymore. They either ignored Michael's condition or ignored us, which made us feel even more isolated than ever, especially as we were now in a new area. The feeling of loneliness was so real and was affecting us as a couple. Michael's behaviour was becoming more and more unpredictable, and I was in a constant state of alertness. When we went out shopping, I couldn't turn my back because I never knew what he was going to do. And on more than one occasion, we'd arrive home and I'd find a liberated pair of socks or a belt in his pocket, and also some grocery items that I'd never put in the trolley. Michael's got quite a sweet tooth as well, and it was quite distressing when taking his clothes for wash, I find some squished and squashed Magnum ice creams. I was feeling terrible. I was embarrassed and becoming more and more tense whenever we went out in public. Joining Alzheimer's WA was a benefit, and learning dementia support. We were provided with forums, seminars, and carers groups and workshops, and respite facilities for Michael when he needed them, and also residential care as that came along. But there was precious little that we could do together. There wasn't anywhere where we could socialise and relax in a warm, friendly environment without feeling shunned or conspicuous by Michael's non-conforming behaviour. And that's when I decided we can't be alone. There must be so many other people out there who were going through those same feelings that we were. And I wanted to create that inclusive place where people felt comfortable, where those living with dementia, their family, their friends, their carers, could come together, share a coffee and a chat, and feel like part of something again. The Forget-Me-Not Cafe Rowley-Stone was created, with the help of my daughter-in-law, who was absolutely amazing, and a wonderful local cafe owner. We told Alzheimer's what we wanted to do, and also invited the local Armidale Council along. Initially, there were 4 of us to it, Michael and I being the first 2. And now there's in excess of 40 at Rowley Stone each time. The word grew, and we were invited to start other forget-me-not cafes. So that's when I got together with a couple of other carers and said, let's form a team and we can create a dementia network for people for cafes across Perth and the regional areas. The philosophy was simple. All we needed to do was work with a local cafe, set out a basic regular day and time each month that we could host the event. We wanted it to be inclusive, not shut away in a cupboard or an extra room. We wanted to be part of that environment, part of that venue. We asked the local council for their support to come along from time to time and maybe bring along information of local events that would be of interest to us and others. We also asked them for some practical help, such as name badges, and maybe even to help towards the cost of the coffee and cake. The forget-me-not cafes are really come as you are. There's no need to book. It's not a registration system. People just turn up on the day when they want to. What do we bring to the cafe, apart from ourselves? Well, we start with the 4 C's. Coffee, cake, chat and creativity. The creativity being tabletop activities. People living with dementia often need to fiddle and fidget. And so we provide simple puzzles, building blocks, Rubik's Cubes, colouring books, just things to occupy. And they often break down that feeling of negativity and create an interaction between people. We also have a notice board in which we put all the information about people, from recognising the signs of dementia, to aged care facilities, to home care packages, and various information that could be localised. Creativity and exploring and utilising the arts and culture are really important. And that's why people living with dementia and those caring for them should carry on doing the things they love. Keep going out to the art centres, keep going on holidays, still travel, still go to a concert and enjoy getting up and having a dance. We also invite music. Music is wonderful and it's such a stimulus and a relaxation for people, for everyone, whether they're living with dementia or not. So often local musicians come along and we have great sing-alongs and just make it a really party atmosphere. Because we believe that no one needs to travel this journey alone and that together we can help one another and realise that. We believe also in positive partnerships, creating at each venue, asking local governments, interlinking with dementia services and fostering awareness and education at that grassroots level. An integral part of dementia is wandering. Thank you. Many people living with dementia just keep moving. And not everyone living with dementia, as I said, is old or infirm. Many are active, like Michael. They're very fit and quite strong. Michael went missing a couple of years ago. We were on a picnic in Kings Park and he disappeared. He was missing for several hours and it was a very traumatic experience. The police and emergency services were fantastic. We had friends, family, even strangers coming and offering their help, looking for him. Eventually, he was found 6 hours later, healthy, fine, wandering around the city. Now, it was a wonder that he had survived that long. He has no road sense any longer, so I was very worried that he may have caused a traffic incident. He was luckily a local police squad car, saw his photograph, picked him up and brought him back to Kings Park, where it was very, very dark and very, very cold by then. Michael was totally nonplussed. He didn't know what all the fuss was about. Came back in the squad car waving to everyone like he was royalty. And which, you know, there was no way of finding out why he went or where he was going to go. Could we have prevented it? Maybe, of him being missing that long. A tracker, Michael had a tracker, it wasn't working. The batteries run flat, and because Michael loves fiddling with things, he took a dislike to the tracker and tried to dismantle it at every chance he could, which isn't unusual. We actually have a friend who sadly has passed away now, and he took such a dislike to his tracker, he buried it in the garden, and his wife still hasn't found it. So, now there's also bracelets that people can wear identity. They're fine, but you're only going to look at that after an incident has happened. You're not going to pick someone's arm up as they're walking along the street. So, and also they can be invasive. At a local advocates meeting, there was a young lady with early onset who I was talking to, and she showed me her wrist. And she said, "This is the bracelet, I can't take it off, and it says Shirley, dementia." She said, "That's not me, you know, that's not who I am." So I started thinking of what we could do. What could there be that would recognise someone living with dementia in a friendly way, in a non-judgmental, and maybe in a pleasant way? And that was to create a forget-me-not pin. A forget-me-not pin could be synonymous with dementia. It could be internationally recognised. And so we put this idea out to some of the people at our memory cafes. And at present, we've got quite a few. And the response was overwhelming. There wasn't a single person with a negative answer. Everyone said, yes, we'd love it. We put it on our website as well, and where people were signing that, yes, yes, get a dementia pin, get a forget-me-not pin. So if we can get this forget-me-not pin, how do we get it? I went to Freshwater Bay Rotary Club and spoke with them, and they were absolutely fantastic. They have now given us a generous donation, and we've sourced our initial 2,000 pins that we plan to have distributed throughout the forget-me-not cafes and then run them across the country. Our vision is wandering is a heightened condition of dementia. It's not going away, and more people are being diagnosed with dementia every day. Too many people have not been as fortunate as Michael. They haven't been found in time, and that is just unacceptable. So, you know, you see someone walking in the street, you recognise that they're wearing a forget-me-not pin. Maybe they've passed you 2 or 3 times. They're healthy, they're fit, they look like everyone else, but that pin could tell you that maybe something's wrong. Maybe they do need some assistance. So we plan to create awareness and extra support by holding the largest forget-me-not cafe, and hopefully at Government House. We wish to invite people living with dementia, local governments, service providers, stakeholders, with a purpose to create and educate an awareness, to raise funds to enable everyone living with dementia the prospect of having a forget-me-not pin and having forget-me-not memory cafes throughout. You actually said what I was going to say. A diagnosis of dementia does not mean life is over. We shouldn't lock ourselves away and shelter from the storm, but once again begin to laugh and dance in the rain. Thank you.
What a wonderful story. Thank you, Angie. When I moved to WA in 2008 from Canberra, my first job in Western Australia was actually working at a dementia-specific facility, 42 residents, and I worked there for 1.5 years. It was an incredible insight for me into the impact not just at an individual level, but certainly at a family level and at a community level. I love, Angie, that what you've done is really create a movement. I love that notion of positive partnerships, local governments, people, organisations, and clubs like Rotary, the backbone of many communities. So, relating that back to Adam's concept of starting a movement, being an agent of change, I really love that you've left a legacy. You've started a legacy and you'll leave a legacy, a tangible one at that as well. So thank you very much, Angie. Allow me to introduce you to our next guest. After working in top-level management roles at national sporting associations, in leagues and clubs, Jeff founded 4 start-up companies in retail and the services sector. Jeff then gained valuable experience working in business development at a state government authority before returning to sport as Deputy Chair at Basketball WA. Following this, Jeff has taken on the role of CEO at Swan Districts Football Club. Jeff is currently guiding the club through what's described as a profound transformation from a traditional and narrow-focused football club to a community enabler with a new purpose, vision, and values. The Swans are empowering their people to build a well-connected and community-engaged sporting club, which develops people, builds community capacity, and improves many lives. Please welcome Jeff Dennis.
Thanks, Denver. Thanks for the opportunity to share with everyone our Swans journey, our journey and our transformation from being a very narrow, focused, traditional football club to a broad community enabler. And from where we started to where we are at our journey, and we've still got a way to go. So the background is where we've started from. When I started 3 years ago, I spent some time with our board trying to explain where things were failing. We had to understand inherently what the problems were in order to create some opportunities. So a background of our football club, a traditional football club, is there's a long, rich history in the Waffle. Our club was formed in 1934. Most of the other clubs were formed in the last 2 centuries ago, in the 1800s, some are 125 years old. We have latent support at our club. There's a whole lot of people through that historical connection have connection to our football club, but aren't engaged with it anymore. We have over 20,000 people connecting up with us in Facebook. We have countless number of people that will drive past our venue at Still Blue Oval in Bassendean along Guildford Road there that would have some fond memories being involved at the stadium with their parents, with their family, with their friends in the past, but don't stop the vehicle and go and visit now. So we have a disconnect. We have an old business model that frames what we do based on sponsorship and signs. That's what we've been doing for the last 50, 60 years, selling sponsorship and signs. The world around us massively changed within 30 years ago when the West Coast Eagles came in, and I don't know how many times I've heard it, they've come in and destroyed the Waffle, destroyed Swan District Football Club, but that was a massive change to our operating model. We needed to adjust. We have declining numbers and sliding relevance. Our attendances continue to slide. TV audiences continue to slide. Membership continues to slide. So it's pretty obvious we needed to change. We've morphed into a very narrow audience. Our audiences are really framed around white men over 60 years of age. And they're people that have been historically connected with the club as a traditional football club in the past. There's just never been that, there's not been that new audience that's following. So it's traditionally been framed around white men over 60 years of age, something that we needed to change. So all sports are really framed around participation pathways and premierships. Pathways, talent development. They really see their mantra and their remit getting more people playing the game, creating opportunities for talented kids to play at the highest particular level, and with clubs winning premierships. I call it the 3 Ps. It's a very narrow focus on how we see the world, and all sports are very similar. In the last 30 years, I think that's even been constrained even more, because the focus primarily for sporting clubs, no matter what shape or size ball, has been around how do we produce the next AFL athlete? How do we produce the next Olympian? How do we produce the next Australian athlete? So it's focused around pathways, talent. So there's a whole lot of energy and resources put around how do we create an environment that we can produce better players through coaches, through better umpires, and that's sort of all of a sudden the purpose of a sporting club, which was very broad in the past, has all of a sudden become very narrow. So the challenge we've got is how do we change? So this is the start of our journey. So we've reset our purpose from being a very narrow focused football club to one that builds community and develops people. That frames and is the foundation of everything we do at our club now. We're helping build a community where everyone belongs, matters and contributes. We're helping develop people to be the very best they can be. But our vision is to be a well-connected and community-engaged sporting club that improves people's lives. I underline that, improves people's lives. So everything we do within our club has to have some reason, some benefit of the outcome being improving people's lives. If it doesn't fit into that and it slips back into the traditional way of running a sporting club, we ain't funding it, we ain't doing it. It's got to comply with how can we genuinely show people that we're improving people's lives. If we can do that and do it really, really well, we become relevant. If we can't do that and we continue to slip back into the old ways, again, that relevance, as we've shown all the empirical evidence, all the metrics, showing that our relevance is sliding away. If we can become relevant, we then, as an extension, become financially sustainable. Our values, we act with integrity. Everyone matters. Now, inclusion to us, we all know what inclusion means. Inherently, we know what it means. But there's a lot of people out there that don't know what these words mean. We need to spell it out to them. So for us, we break it down really, really simple. Everyone is welcome at Swan District's football club, no matter what shape or size you are, no matter what colour you are, whatever sexual preference you are, whatever religious background you may be, everyone is welcome at Swan District's football club. We need to break it down so people understand that we are truly an inclusive club. And that comes more than words. It comes from actions, and you'll see a little bit later how that plays out with us. We want to raise the bar. We want to create an environment where people can be the very best they can be. Whether they're playing, or whether they're volunteering, or whether they're coaching, or they're administrating, or any other extension to our community programs, they can be the very best they can be. And we fly together. So our value proposition, and this is the benefit of sport. As Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to unite people in a way little else can. Sport can create hope. It speaks to people in a language they understand. Football, Australian rules football within Western Australia, is a universal language. We all get football. Now, whether you like football or not, you can't avoid it. It's in your face. It's there. So we know who a Nick Nat is, whether we follow the West Coast Eagles or follow football. So for us, it's a language. It's a language we use to connect with people, to start a conversation. If we can start a conversation, we can then start an engagement. We can start something that's meaningful, and that will play out as some of the things I'm showing. So this is really, really important. It's important not just for football, it's important for sport. Because if sport can become more inclusive, more empowering, more enabling, and sport can help people make good decisions within their own lives and their own challenges that they have, it can play a very powerful role. Because sport is invasive. Most people are connected to sport in one shape or another, whether as a participant, an active participant, or a supporter, or just following it within the media. So our community touchpoints are Aboriginal peoples, young peoples, people with disability, cold communities, and seniors, and that's in relation to that loneliness space. So at the moment, because this has been a transformation for us, it's a long journey for us. For the moment, we've been really active in the Aboriginal space, the young people space, and the people with disability. We are still morphing into cold and seniors. So in our journey so far to date, we've been using the conversation. So how do we transform all of our people to buy into this journey here, to accept who we are as a club and what role they play in our club? Conversation. There's so many conversations we've been having with so many people so they understand who we are and what we do. Educate, energise and mobilise. So this conversation is the education part, to explain to people the role we can play in improving people's lives, what we can do. If we can educate them and they can buy into the message and own the message and own a part of clubs, and that's that connection people have with sporting clubs, they feel that sense of ownership, and that's where the brands of sport become so strong, can become so powerful, especially if there's other messages driving that, not just success on the field or on the court. And then we can energise our people and mobilise them. We can create strategies that we can get as many people as possible connected to the club out there, selling the message and connecting with the community, building a better community. And we talk about people within our club, not just our players. We would have about 90 female players, about 90 male players. We have our staff, we have countless volunteers, we have our board. As an extension, we have the junior football clubs that we connect with. As an extension, we have the community organisations that we connect with. So all of a sudden, we have lots of different possible touch points to community through mobilising our people. So when I keep referring to our people, it's a collective approach. So if we can find strategies to mobilise more and more people, we have more and more foot soldiers out there building this better community for us all. If all of sport can do that, it becomes mighty powerful, very, very powerful. And building partnerships. So part of this whole process is ensure that we're not doing it by ourselves. We have funding partners, a lot of LGAs we connect with, state government. We have a lot of commercial partners that in the past used to connect with us with science and sponsorship. All of a sudden now we're talking to them a whole different language, and they like this language, because they see themselves playing a role in building and improving their own communities that they belong to. So this is our logic model, and I'm sure you've all seen logic models before, but the impact side here is where we focus. Traditionally for sports, it's outputs. Traditionally for sports, WA Football Commission, absolutely. Traditionally for sports, participation, how many AFL players can be drafted. So that's a very simple metric. So, and participation plays just the pure nature of sport and teams is inclusive in its nature. But we see this as, we see this here as a very narrow view. So that means all of a sudden you're playing in the first three areas here. We want to be playing in these bottom two areas. Impact, personal, social, community impact. If I give an example, for us, sense of belonging. For us, sense of self-worth, resilience. How can we enable people to make better decisions for themselves? How can we enable people to own their own decisions? So we start with that. So if one of our staff comes up to us and says, well, we've got this great idea here, I'll give an example, Brightest Minds. We call it's a program that works and engages with Aboriginal teenagers that are shown that they're at risk from disconnecting from community. So they've got this great program. They've got a proposition to go to Police WA in order to get some funding. And I say, okay, well that's fine. It looks all good. How does it affect here, the impact? So then we work back from the impact. The outcomes would be employment. It would be cultural awareness. The outputs would be participation. Then all of a sudden, that changes the shape of what this Brightest Minds program looks like. What does it look like that's going to achieve all the way up to here? Eventually, we need to show that it's creating a sense of belonging, a sense of self-worth. And what we find is some of the young girls that have been involved in this program have participated in the program. All of a sudden, we've created opportunities for them to do some casual work at our home game days or at our bar upstairs. And then all of a sudden they're starting to feel, well, they've got some worth, that they can contribute to community. All of a sudden that sense of belonging, that sense of connection, because then all of a sudden we've got all of our wider volunteers, our wider supporters that are up there speaking and engaging with them as they're buying their sausage sizzle, as they're buying their can of Coke. So that has that connection, that sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves, and more importantly, sense of self-worth. they've got to they can contribute to community. So that's our logic model which drives everything we do. And some of the examples of some of the programs that we run with, we have, we're up in the Pilbara as well. We have staff operating in 4 communities: Roebourne, Port Hedland, we have Newman and Onslow. In Port Hedland we run a REACH program, partnering with the Hedland Senior High School. We have over 100 teenage girls at risk. We have a special breakout room. We have 4 staff that work really, really closely with them to help build attendances, and the attendances go up. It's great output, but again, the metric that we're focused on is the impact. We have our annual Count Me In Day. I see Hayden over in the corner there, who's actively involved with us as well. We get involved with the All-Ability football program. I think there's 10 teams out there. We bring 2 or 3 different games during the course of each of our seasons, and we have them involved with playing beforehand. We treat the whole day as a celebration of inclusion. It's a wonderfully successful day. We just had it last weekend, and it brings so many smiles to not only the people that we involve in the day, people with disability, but our people, our Swans people, which is the broader cohort, just love this day. The smiles and the welcoming environment that we create and that they're a part of, that's some of the actions that we can see this transformation take shape. They can see that they're a part of what the platform that we're providing to the wider community. School inclusion programs, we work closely with Cyril Jackson Secondary College, the Education Support Centre. We have our players and staff will go out and run programs within the school. Some of the participants from those programs will come out to our club, as they've done there, and run some sessions. We also have a All-Ability disco that goes on, I think, Monday morning, and Wednesday morning would be the All-Ability karaoke. We have a homeless, started off, the intent was a homeless breakfast. It's morphed into a community breakfast because we wanted to make sure it's inclusive. So we start that just before either the karaoke or the disco, and the participants, and there's 50 to 100 that turn up to those regularly, come along for their breakfast, together with people that may just need help that are there, and together with other people from within the club. It's an all-inclusive approach every Wednesday morning we do. This is an example of the integrated football. Last Saturday it was North Beach against Coolbenia. It's a wonderful, wonderful celebration, and our supporters love seeing integrated football at our games. We're the only club that does it, and hopefully it will spread to other clubs, because what we want to try and do is create an environment that everyone feels welcome to come along to a Swan District's home game. We also do, this is really easy because it's the skills clubs have. We have governance skills. We have people with disability that want to get into the governance space, want to work on boards, but they really don't have the skills or the background in how to do that. So we help upskill some people that again have an aspiration to start working on boards, and we go through the simple processes about what good governance looks like. We have our NAIDOC home games. We do a whole lot of work, as we said, Brightest Minds. We work with the Justice Department as well, with some boys, Aboriginal youth at risk, and we have celebrations through our match days. We've transformed our home game propositions to be far more inclusive. Again, instead of just going there and watching the football, again, a very narrow focused cohort, it's very broad, and we want to make sure we're creating opportunities to connect and build new audiences, which are the kids. So everything we do is focused around attracting young families. We also have, because we have all this activity zones, our Swans Play Zone, there's a whole lot of free activities for kids and families to be involved in, a whole lot of competitions during quarter times and half time, a whole lot of music going on there. We thought, well, we need a sensory tent. We needed a swan's nest. So it's a case, if some kids have sensory overload, need a space to reset and calm down and to re-energise and go back out, we have an occupational therapist in there that provides that service. And more people are now starting to realise, okay, that's available. There's a reason to go to watch the football now. So all of a sudden then it gives us an opportunity to talk to a whole new cohort we really haven't talked to in the past. We're talking about a whole new cohort we really haven't talked to in the past is women. It's really been a male-dominant sport. Yes, people can say we tick the boxes through history because there's the girlfriends come along or the mums come along. That's not really ticking the box. So all of a sudden now we've got a wonderful vehicle to talk to half the population we've been pretty bad at talking to in the past. Which means the language we use and who we are and the symbols we use has to change because we've really got to actively connect. So instead of saying us, because we're talking about our league men's team, it's not us. That's us. Our community football, because we've got opportunity to connect with a broad range of people out there in the community that are already connected with football, already connected with that universal language. And our multicultural programs, we really haven't touched in the past, but there's a whole wide world of opportunity out there. And employment. So if we talk about sense of self-worth, it really gets down to employment. So we try and create now with other third-party partners that can help us bridge the gap with some of the participants in our programs to get them employed. So we're working now with Midland Gate Shopping Centre. The partnership is that they will create an opportunity in one of their cafes where we can take over the cafe for the day. So then we're working with another partner to upskill some of the participants in our programs to do a barista course. And then we go in and those participants with our programs will be running the cafe for that particular day. So it's a wonderful, inclusive opportunity. That's our journey.
What a wonderful journey to embark on at Swanee's club on the way up. A couple of things from Jeff there that I'd like to pinpoint or reflect on. Sport broadly is still pitching at the old majority. Now, when we look at the statistics in Western Australia and indeed right across our country, that old majority is actually a new minority. But sport broadly, we've got a bit of work to do. We work with about 650 clubs a year in varying capacities each year. I think one of the things that any of our team can tell you is that the best and most successful clubs focus on community and not necessarily the vehicle. The vehicle will take care of itself. That'll get people coming along. But when you engage people and offer that sense of belonging and wrap community around them, that's when you keep them. One of the determinants of longevity and high quality of life is social inclusion. We know this. Research suggests that social exclusion or isolation is as detrimental to a person as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's great to see that Swanees are doing their bit to change that and really embark on a journey of change. Inclusion is about all people, absolutely, and I love that notion, Jeff, that you're really looking to include everyone in your community. I guess the other thing I took away was sometimes you need to make a special effort, a concerted effort, to really reach out to those that are vulnerable, to touch base with people and specifically invite them, because previously they've never had the opportunity. Previously no one's come knocking to say this club is for you. So I really love that. And Jeff, we wish you all the best for the rest of your journey at Swans. Our next guest presenter is Ian Tsolakis. Ian commenced at Crown in 2014 following 15 years of work in the employment services industry, where he developed a strong understanding of people's need for certainty pertaining to employment. Ian has spent years becoming familiar with the government's Disability Employment Services, or DES, and job active contracts. Knowing the demands of these programs, Ian realised that there must be a better way for businesses and organisations that require talent to access people with disability. Ian's enthusiasm is beyond doubt. His experience in employment services gave him the insider knowledge to design and implement an employment model that holds aloft 5 pillars of strength. This 5-pillar framework for CROWNability is the bricks and mortar, which also reflects Ian's determination and persistence to effect positive change for people with disability. CROWNability is Crown Resort's strategy to attract, recruit, retain, and achieve sustainable outcomes for people with disability. Please join me in welcoming Ian Tsolakis.
Look, before I start, I'd like to share with you a 3-minute video about our program.
Hi, I'm Kurt Fernley, and I'm the Ambassador for Crown Resort's Disability Employment, known as CROWNability. CROWNability is an extraordinary program that's unique to Crown. This program is changing lives of people, and it's fantastic to see the impact that it's having on the employees and the Crown community. And ultimately, I guess, our customers as well. Those who are touched by CROWNability speak of its incredible success for transforming lives and providing hope. I'd like you to meet a few of the team.
Hi, my name is Angie and I work here at the pub. I lost my leg when I was 7 years old. I really love walking. I've climbed mountains, fences, rocks, and just done everything everyone else does. Without CROWNability, I think I'd be very insecure about working, and by this point I probably would have given up. They've given me a second chance to prove to not only myself but everyone else that I am capable to work just like anyone else is.
Hi, my name is Padish, and this is my third year apprentice working at CROWNability. So last year I was awarded Apprentice of the Year and working my way to becoming a chef. I love food. I love everything. There's no barriers at the moment because we have interpreters and we have one-on-one meetings. I've definitely been able to be more independent and proven that I can actually work in a kitchen and work in this setting. I like to be included, being involved in the team and creating friendships from that and having that support also.
Another bright new day. Hi, I'm Ollie. I work in Carvers in the buffet section. My disability is autism and ADHD, where sometimes it's supposed to keep me distracted. I can instead use it to keep me roaring through the whole shift 100% of the time, even 110% of the time. The number one quality I bring is friendliness. We're all one big family. Uncle Cassius, stepsister Georgia, Grandma Irene. I want the customers to go home with that extra bit of smile. I want to make their day. CROWNability has done an amazing job at helping me to use my core skills really to my advantage, and I've just been so thankful for it.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I am a conference attendant. I love customer service. I love the liaising with the guests and also within the team members. The CROWNability program has changed my life. It has helped me to be a better performer in my workplace, and personally, it has improved my character. They're there to help you and guide you when you need help until you get confident with the work you have to do. It has helped me to grow as a person.
We look beyond the label of disability here at Crown. We look beyond the resume, we look beyond the job description, and we focus on their ability.
As a manager, I've learnt that you treat everyone equal. Over the last couple of years, I've had a number of CROWNabilities come through the door. The support and networks with the CROWNability team we've got at Crown, the whole recruitment process is fantastic.
The impact of employment is immeasurable. Employing people with disability has a real positive impact on the whole family, and also provides economic stability for their children. But most of all, it's a giant step towards a pathway to independence.
Well, it takes the pressure off you, I guess, to know that your kids will be independent. They'll be able to move out, stand on their own 2 feet, having stable employment, a career path as well. It really has been a godsend.
It does give me a peace of mind to know that I've got a work situation for a number of years here.
I've been able to actually focus on what my disability and limitations are, be able to work on it and actually improve myself as a person.
We're all able to do anything we put our minds to it. The truth is anyone can do anything.
Like a family, we support each other and we become like a real team and we share our responsibilities.
With CROWNability by my side, it's proof that people believe that I can work. It's giving me that leg up, excuse the pun.
And that's the very reason we have a program. I'll just put my glasses on. This is my acceptable work accommodation. I want to take a moment. For you to imagine this story. I want you to imagine a man. Imagine this man walking towards you. Picture this. He's wearing an oversized shirt, loose pants, he has a grey beard and messy short hair. He looks lost and he looks nervous. This man is also a below-the-knee amputee. Now I want you to imagine this same man approaching me at the Crown HR reception desk and asking me, do you have any jobs in IT? Whilst this question was directed to me, my question to you is, what would employees do in this situation? I'll come back to this story and this sliding doors moment shortly. Good morning all, and first I'd like to say thank you very much for attending today's Social Inclusion Forum, and I'd like to thank Denver and Amy and Paul for putting on this event. I think as a community what's really important that we share our stories and continually raise awareness about our community and inclusion, and we can only get better at this if we do work together to understand that. It's taking some time for our community to get to this place, but congratulations for it. To quote Albert Einstein, the world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. At Crown, we changed our thinking. Now I'd like to come back to the story I started with a man that was lost and nervous who asked me if we had jobs in IT at Crown. This man's name is Sebastian, and this is Sebastian's story. Sebastian arrived at Crown having not worked for 15 years due to his disability. Prior to arriving at Crown, he was homeless, living on the streets with no family relationships. Through our program, Sebastian gained employment in IT. Why? We believed in him and we unpacked the skills he required. Even though there were gaps in his resume, through talking with him, we learnt that he had the skills for the job for Crown. The impact of employment was immeasurable. Sebastian now has income. He can now buy food. He now sleeps in his own bed. He now lives independently. He now has purpose and can further work on other areas of his life, like family relationships. He now no longer needs welfare. Sebastian, I'm pleased to say, has now enough money and has put a deposit on his first house. Why was this impact immeasurable? Because as an organisation and as a program, we look beyond the label of disability, beyond the resume, beyond the obstacles, and found ability. So that is why we developed the CROWNability program. The program is Crown's strategy to provide an employment pathway for people with disability. It's about matching abilities to real jobs. Our efforts to provide employment opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds began in 2009 with our Indigenous Employment Program. And taking a lesson from that program, we launched the CROWNability program across Melbourne and Perth. The main lesson we learnt was to develop a process and a model that would focus on retaining employees long term through effective post-placement support. Whilst I didn't have all the answers to what the model and program looked like, here's what I did know. I knew that if we had a program, the program had to be effective with strong post-placement support. I knew that we needed a clear objective for the program. Crown's goal was to increase the participation of people with disability into real jobs and create sustained employment outcomes. I knew we needed to create a model and process to break down the complexities and obstacles of employing people with disability. And I also knew that we needed a program that would be fully supportive and a personalised model centred on education and to ensure people with disability thrive in the workplace and have a purpose in our community. In order to achieve a successful program, we knew that we needed to build an engaging and compelling narrative around employing people with disability. The program had to create a sense of empathy in order to appeal to people's emotions. In order for our message to be powerful and to resonate, it had to be based on personal connections to all our stakeholders in our business, so we could create real engagement and also a buy-in for the program to move forward. So we built a model based on 5 pillars, which I'd now like to share with you. That's our model. So there's a lot of complexities in disability. If you're a parent, if you have a son or a daughter who wants to go through all the information, it's complex. So what we thought we'd do is define 5 important pillars. So to create employment opportunities, we must work with providers. Pre-employment is really important. Recruitment, post-placement support in our community. And with those 5 pillars, we've put in place procedures. We have 63 procedures and 5 policies around disability employment. And our ultimate goal is to get the right job match and the right job fit. So I share that with you because we have to make it simple. My team that work in the program, all their KPIs are based on these 5 pillars. As I said before, it's unfortunately that there's a lot of information out there in the community and it's challenging for people to really get a good understanding. I'll leave that there. So it's really important moving forward that our community, that we have our future is accessible. And what I mean by this is that we must all work together to achieve an accessible future, where the barriers which stand in people's ways no longer exist. Accessibility isn't a topic that just affects some of us. We need to see a future where people can access a ramp at the beach, where education explicitly teaches an inclusive curriculum to ensure there is generational change for the future. We need students going to school today to understand how to work and live with people. And when they become adults, it's going to be an easy conversation. It's so important. So education and awareness is critical at every level of our society, but it starts with school. We're sort of going the back way, actually, the way we're doing it at the moment. So, there's been exclusionary attitudes that have prevented our community progressing and to become accessible in all aspects of our life. When people fly on planes, we must ensure there are accessible toilets. And when we go to a restaurant, we must ensure there are braille menus. In addition, for deaf people, we need to make sure that when they're watching videos, there is text captioning. And also, it's important that people can get a job without the fear of discrimination. It's not okay to go to an interview and the recruitment person doesn't understand how to communicate to you. It's not okay. It happens too often. So we've got a process in place to capture that. And if anyone wants to talk to me about that, I can share it with you, but I don't have enough time to go through it all. But it's really important that we provide equity and respect for every human being in our community, no matter their circumstances. Google as an organisation states, the accessibility problems of today are the mainstream breakthroughs of tomorrow. Our thinking as a society is changing and must continue to change. Our everyday conversations must remove the barriers that prevent us from moving forward, and we must make sure that we develop disability-confident organisations. So what do I mean by disability-confident organisations? It's about organisations playing a leading role in changing the perceptions and attitudes of people with disability to create a culture of access and inclusion for all. Working towards an accessible future is everyone's responsibility. And in the words of British neurologist Oliver Sacks, I wish for the world that views disability, mental or physical, not as a hindrance, but as attributes that can be seen as powerful assets if given the right opportunities. Through our program, we are creating a future which ensures that people are not excluded because of their disability.
Rather, as Oliver Sacks states, that their attributes are seen as powerful assets when given the right opportunities. So we have a very clear vision at Crown to create an experience of access and inclusion for all. Not just in employment, but we need to make sure that our assets are accessible, and we have a huge investment at the moment where we're putting a lot of investment into our assets. Critical. We must make sure that our establishment can support every person that enters the property. We have 3 clear goals: to increase the participation of people with disability into Crown, to build meaningful careers, not just jobs. We've had a number of successful people that have been placed into jobs for 8 hours a week because that was the perception of our managers. With a bit of hard work and an understanding, a lot of those people have now graduated to managers and to supervisors. It's not easy, they need support. We have a program to support that. We have a full-time person in our business that just works on the technical components of workplace adjustments and also post-placement support. You know, we can talk about jobs and quotas and targets and put lots of people into work. That's great, but we have to get the technical understanding embedded into our business. Every person that works at Crown needs to understand the importance of that. And it's not just for people with disability. We're doing it every day with our own staff. We're providing guidance and support. Why have we been irresponsible in our journey not to include people with disability? It's not acceptable, and it can't continue. And I'm pleased to say that everyone in here will make that change in their own way. And again, the word I use is we need to develop a disability confident organisation. And that takes time, it really does. But in 6 years of where we're at the moment with our organisation, we've moved. You know, we've moved mountains, but we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm never satisfied. When people say you're doing a great job and all that, that's very nice, but we've got a lot of work to do. So, you know, I'm proud to say that our model is working. CROWNability is not just about employment, it's about, as I said before, access and inclusion in everything that we do. In our conversations on a daily basis and when making decisions that relate to our business units, we must always consider accessibility and inclusion in every aspect of our business. I'm proud to say our program is changing people's lives and is also making a positive contribution to their families. This is in line with Crown's aspiration to become a leader in transforming attitudes and the perceptions towards people with disability in our workplace and in the broader community. Our strategy is demonstrating that people with disability can work and work in meaningful jobs, not jobs for jobs. We've provided over 546 employment opportunities across Perth and Melbourne. And we're very proud of that. We currently have 305 people employed at the moment across Perth and Melbourne. Unfortunately, our business in Melbourne is now closed because of the pandemic, but we're in contact with every single person in the program once a week to ensure that they are okay and they require support. The program has become a real family. Kurt Fernley, our ambassador, has rung every single person in our program to be connected. So that's how important this work is. Our model and process, from our perspective, is breaking down the complexities and obstacles about employing people with disability into our organisation. It's working because we are working hard to remove barriers. Our changing attitudes are really important in the context of this conversation, particularly in the way that we consider persons' skills and capacity and ability. It's really important. You've got to put a different lens on it, just as we did with Sebastian. So we can develop, a culture which is disability confident. Our passion as an organisation ensures that we are leading the way with disability and access and inclusion. If organisations value people with disability, then it is my hope, real hope, that our society will naturally follow to become a positive, inclusive force for change. Together, all of us can make a difference. Thank you.
Bill Clinton famously said, "The price of doing the same old thing is far greater than the price of change." And I love that Crown are changing a whole system. 46% of people of working age are not represented in the labour force. That's people with disability. Just think about that stat. 46% of people with disability are not represented in the labour force. I love that opportunity. Once again, I think this reset through COVID has given us an opportunity to drive inclusion. It's a changing world, and I really love that Crown are leading the way in terms of changing attitudes and looking at systematic change, Ian. 546 opportunities of employment. I think that's massive and probably the biggest that I could think of in terms of real and meaningful employment across the country. I love that it's an education, it's a journey, and you're committed to that as well. So well done and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now, our final speaker for the night, for the morning even. Getting ahead of myself, it feels like a long day. Recognised by the Australian Financial Review as one of Australia's 100 most influential women is Beth Shaw. Beth Shaw holds a number of roles in corporate and not-for-profit sectors that enable Beth to drive meaningful change. Beth is an Associate Director at KPMG, advising organisations on people, change, culture, diversity and inclusion. Beth has worked across a number of industries to advance gender equality, including police, sport, government, retail and the resources sector. Some heavy hitters there. Beth is a board member of the Australian Inclusion Group and the Stella Prize, and recently completed her term as President of the United Nations Women Australia, the national committee representing the United Nations Gender Equality Agency. Beth is also the youngest woman to ever hold this role and the first Western Australian. Driving change across business, government and the community sector, Beth saw and was recognised recently by WA Business News, which presented her with the Professional Services Award at the 2018 40 Under 40 Awards. Please join me in welcoming Beth Shaw.
Thank you, and it's so lovely to be here today with such terrific advocates for social change. And it's great to be talking about social inclusion in this strange time we find ourselves in the era of social distancing. I think if the last few months have taught us anything, it really is about the power of community and the extent to which we as human beings really long for connection and belonging. The pandemic has impacted people in significantly different ways, from older people more susceptible to the disease, to younger people more susceptible to job losses, from those with secure jobs who are able to work from home to those on various front lines, whether they be health, logistics, retail or service industries, often poorly paid and highly exposed. From those in migrant and newly arrived communities having difficulties accessing health and financial support information in their language, to those who live alone away from family or friends, or for those whose home is not a safe refuge but in fact a place of violence and abuse. It's clear that the pandemic has exposed major fault lines in our society. It's highlighted privilege and disadvantage, secure and insecure work, social inclusion and those on the margins. And it has exacerbated inequality. And so while my speech today isn't focused on COVID-19, I did want to situate us in this important moment and this context to really affirm that, to my mind, social inclusion has never been more important than it is right now. To ensure our emergency responses are considering those more vulnerable and at risk, to make sure our state's recovery doesn't leave anyone behind. And I think on a really human level, to understand that in times of fear and uncertainty, we need each other now more than ever. So it is so nice to be in a room full of people and to be connecting today. What I wanted to talk to you today was about the importance of inclusion in organisations and workplaces, and to focus on one of the biggest levers of inclusion, which is inclusive leadership. And I want to caveat what I'm saying by saying that you don't need to be in a formal leadership role to lead people or to have a positive influence or to be an agent of change, as Denver talked about earlier today. So as Denver said, through my work with KPMG, I've worked with this incredible diversity of organisations, and I love my job because I get to go and work with, you know, sporting teams to police to university colleges. I worked for an international music corporation, and I was desperate to get a backstage pass to the Taylor Swift tour at the time, which did not happen. So it's not all perks, sadly. But in the world of diversity and inclusion, we often spend a lot of our time talking about diversity and neglect the critical lever of inclusion. And my favourite way of thinking about diversity and inclusion is thinking about that great quote that says, diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. So diversity is all of our efforts to attract people with different backgrounds and perspectives into the workplace, but inclusion is really our efforts to ensure that they're respected and valued and able to make a contribution. And it's critical that we focus on inclusion because you don't get the benefits of diversity just by getting diverse people through the door. You get the benefits when people are empowered to think differently and share the benefits of their unique background and experience. You get the benefits when people are included and respected and empowered. Inclusive organisations experience many benefits, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the research in this space, but organisations that are inclusive are typically associated with enhanced productivity and performance, increased innovation, improved employee engagement, and lower levels of discrimination. So, in short, creating an inclusive workplace is absolutely critical. But how do you do this? How can you take an organisation that's not particularly inclusive and really focus on enhancing that? Or how do you maintain inclusion in an organisation that's doing reasonably well on that front? And I think for all of us, we recognise the importance of leadership in this regard. And when we think about our own organisations, thinking about or reflecting on our own behaviour as a leader, asking questions like, are leaders role modelling inclusive behaviour, or do they inadvertently reinforce in-groups and out-groups in our organisation? Are leaders rewarding and promoting people who really reflect our values as an organisation? Or do you get a free pass on being a total jerk if you're a high performer? And I think the stuff in the news about AMP over the last couple of weeks really brings those questions to the fore around what you can get away with if you are a high performer in an organisation despite the espoused values. So are leaders creating the right environment for people to bring their whole selves to work? So thinking about inclusive leaders, and I appreciate that you might not be able to see that, so don't worry, I'm going to talk through it all. I just always feel like I need to bring slides in case I'm not interesting enough, but then when you put a slide together like that, it's not particularly engaging anyway. Consultants, what do we do? This is what we do all the time. The first attribute I would say that inclusive leaders tend to demonstrate is that inclusive leaders value difference. And they communicate that value and the importance of different perspectives that can bring to the business or the organisation. And they might show that value of difference in various ways, hiring people outside the industry, the sector, to bring fresh thinking, seeking different perspectives in meetings, and not expecting everyone to bring the same skills and experiences to the job or work in the same way. And when I think about valuing difference, I think about Abraham Lincoln and his famous team of rivals that he put together for his cabinet back in 1860 in the United States. So he thought he would lead best if he brought together smart people with different views to push him out of his comfort zone, and included in his cabinet the 3 men who ran against him for the nomination for president. The second attribute that inclusive leaders demonstrate is curiosity. Inclusive leaders are curious and interested in other people's background and experiences. It's difficult to be an inclusive leader if you don't take the time to get to know your people. And it's not about that surface level awareness, it's about understanding and communication. So that might be expressed by a leader taking time to get to know their people and how they work best, having an open relationship and strong lines of communication, and understanding different skills and capabilities of people in their team and what their aspirations are for new opportunities and development. At KPMG, we're always forming new teams all the time with new projects, and so we bring people together very quickly, work together quite intensely, and then disband and go form a different team for a different project. So we always have to get to know new team members and how they work very quickly. So we developed this thing called personas, where everyone fills out a PowerPoint slide, because again, we're consultants. But it has a bunch of different things about the person that it normally takes time to get to know, to get into a good working rhythm. So, you know, mine might be, my name's Beth, I am not a morning person, you can call me whenever you like, but probably the best way to reach me is text. I'm very happy to collaborate with people, but probably need to go at various points in time and work by myself for a few hours to actually get something done. And all of those just little nuances and ways of working together so you can gel quite quickly as a team is quite useful. Other people have things like, I have to be home at this time every day, all of that kind of stuff. Just little things to help teams get to know each other, I think, can be quite useful to creating an inclusive environment and setting everyone up for success. A third attribute of inclusive leadership is self-awareness, which is really a critical part of emotional intelligence. So being aware of emotions in yourself and others, using that awareness to help manage behaviour and relationships. And I think some examples of self-awareness in good leaders are being a really good listener, not feeling like as a leader you need to be the person that's talking the most, recognising you might be biased in situations and finding ways to challenge that bias, and understanding that if you really want to know as a leader what your people are thinking, it's often best not to express your view first, but hold back and see what your people really think without fear or favour of what you might think. The fourth attribute is that inclusive leaders are open to new information, to new circumstances, to new people, different ways of doing things and change. Leaders who are open might reflect this by not being particularly wedded to a particular way of doing things or the way that things have always been done, seeking feedback from a diversity of people and constantly learning, sharing their own learning and development goals and really focusing that no matter what level you are at, continual improvement is wonderful. A fifth attribute is inclusive leaders promote collaboration and value teamwork. So this might look like a leader or an organisation that incentivises and rewards collective effort and collaboration rather than individual performance, openly and transparently sharing information in a bid to bring down silos, and working to connect people to a broader organisational purpose. Many of you have probably heard some version of the fabled story about a janitor meeting President Kennedy at Cape Canaveral during the early days of NASA. The president supposedly asked the man, "What do you do?" to this man in a hallway with a broom, and he said, "Well, Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon." And there's some speculation as to whether this meeting did or did not take place, but there's a good reason that that story is commonly referred to, because it shows that a workplace that's motivated by a higher purpose is so critical to inclusion, collaboration and teamwork, that sense of being part of something bigger than just your job. The last element of inclusive leadership is to build relationships where people feel valued and respected. Inclusive leaders know that people work differently and understand what individuals need to perform at their best. So to tie up that those ideas of inclusive leadership, I just want to reflect that we commonly underestimate how much we moderate our behaviour and adjust who we are to fit into our workplaces. And to some extent, I think that moderation and adjustment is required, because on a personal level, I would probably turn up unwashed at 11 a.m. in Ugg boots every morning. So I think some adjustment is important. But as leaders and influencers and agents of change in our organisation, the last thing that we want to do is to attract diverse people into our organisations and inadvertently encourage them to completely homogenise and act the same as everyone else. A few years ago, I was talking to some of the most senior police women in the state, and they were reflecting on their career in the police as a very hierarchical, male-dominated organisation. And I asked them, how have you managed to get to the top, these very, very senior roles in an organisation where it is stacked against women from in many ways? Both of them said at the exact same time, by acting the way the blokes do. And look, good on them for getting there, and I can completely understand that that would be the only option that they might have had. But what a loss for our police agency and our community that the only senior women in that leadership team had to conform to this dominant culture in order to succeed. And who knows what these women could have brought to the police agency if they were able to bring the benefits of their diverse perspective and to be their authentic selves in those roles. This is true of many people in many workplaces. Dominant organisational cultures and ways of working permeate us all in ways both conscious and unconscious. So the challenge I wanted to leave you with today is thinking about, from an organisation's perspective, if we're trying to be innovative and creative and dynamic and inclusive, how do we bring people from diverse backgrounds with different ways of thinking and different perspectives into our organisations and empower them to be themselves? And how can we, all of us in leadership roles, find a way to bring our own authentic selves to our work in a way that reflects who we really are in terms of how we act, how we relate, how we share, and how we lead. Thanks so much for having me today. Lovely to talk to you all.
Great and easy to follow model for any aspiring manager in the room, or any manager in the room, anyone in particular at any organisation. I really love that notion of valuing difference. I love curiosity, being self-aware, being open, and I think you really epitomised it with that notion of authenticity to wrap it around. So thank you very much, Beth Shaw. So today we've gone on a full journey, and what I'd like you to do as I present the learnings from each speaker is just give them a little round of applause. So we'll keep moving it. But the first one was, before you start, the first one, Adam. So Adam really spoke about that notion of legacy, being the agent of change, starting a movement, and that notion that a movement starts with one person. Really powerful. I think the other things for me was that notion of with privilege comes responsibility. So Adam Nankin. Angie McCluskey spoke about partnerships wrapping community around our most vulnerable. Dementia doesn't discriminate, and we all have a role to play, and I think Angie is the living proof of starting a movement through the Forget-Me-Not cafes. Angie McCluskey. Jeff Dennis, CEO of the Swans. Focus on community, not the vehicle. It's a changing world and we need to adapt with it. Sport needs to go on this journey with us. The purposeful inquiry and the invite specifically to marginalised groups and being prepared for them beforehand is really important. Thank you very much, Jeff Dennis. Ian Tsolakis, we're really talking here about changing a system that is broken. It's well articulated. It's not delivering the results we need. So really focusing around what people bring to the party rather than their differences has really driven that CROWNability project. Thank you very much, Ian Tsolakis. And Beth Shaw, just one more for good measure. On behalf of our team at Inclusion Solutions, I'd really like to acknowledge your presence today. We were mildly nervous about holding a public event in this current world of COVID. However, I guess what we have done is really take every precaution and been really supported by you guys to make sure that we all do the right thing. I'd like to thank in particular a few people, Diane and Mark from Telethon Speech and Hearing. Fantastic venue, brilliant location and really a great team to work with, so thank you to you guys. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors as well, because without them we wouldn't be able to bring you this forum in its capacity that it is today. So Rotary WA, so Joy and your team at Rotary, thank you very much. And Paul Holly from Evolve Wealth Management, I will get it right. Evolve Wealth Management. So thank you very much to you and your team as well, Paul. One thing that I did mention up front was we do have some commitment postcards. We'd love the opportunity to keep in touch with you guys. So if you've not filled one out, just behind this wall here, on the other side obviously, is a table filled with postcards and a little commitment letterbox. Just post it in the letterbox and we'll come back to you within 6 weeks to see how you're going and to see whether you require any help. If you are taking photos, we'd love for you guys to tag us in on Facebook, Inclusion Solutions WA. And if you can, I'm sure Emma, wherever Emma is, our photographer, will badger you for a photo with the sign as well, the Social Inclusion Matters sign. From us, I'd like to also pay a special tribute to our team. These forums come with a heap of hard work, and generally it's about 12 to 13 weeks out. In the current environment in particular, it's been incredibly important that we dot every I and cross every T and the other way around, if you were listening. But in particular, I guess I'd like to thank the two at the front. So if you guys wouldn't mind standing, Amy Perry and Jahu Dagahoy. So it takes a full team, as we would have heard from Beth and her presentation. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone else in our team and the volunteers that have come together today as well. For the ones that I can see, Christy Jolly, Kira Cooney, Jennifer Irvine, Adam Nankin, Kiri Penta, and I'll probably miss you a few, Paul Flay, our CEO, Big Tom, wherever Tom is, he's floating around the back, wrestling with the door. So all you guys and anyone else that I have missed, probably floating around outside, thank you very much to our team. I wouldn't mind you guys putting your hands together for the team at Inclusion Solutions as well. Now, in closing, we have got one more forum penciled in for this year, so details to be confirmed, but at this point in time, 25th of November, and that'll be held at Coburn Arc or similar, so somewhere in the Coburn vicinity. We'd love to see you guys there, and one reminder from Emma, our photographer, if the speakers wouldn't mind at the end just coming forward to the stage, we'd love to grab a group photo. That's it from us, so thank you very much. I guess one last thing is that the most important thing of any gathering in my culture is food. We've got some food at the back, so please stay behind, grab a bite to eat and share in some community with one another. Thank you very much.